Me and Alex Doherty, Chase Murren, and Emmett Boylan from Bill Roberts Elementary, Denver, Colorado, guests of Representative Leader.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shebo, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Armagost, Bacon, Byrd, Representative Byrd,
Excused.
Bockenfeld, Rep. Bockenfeld,
Excused.
Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Brown, Catlin, Doherty, Representative Doherty,
Excused.
DeGraff, Degree Kennedy, Dixon, Rep. Dixon,
Excused.
Duran, English, Representative English,
Excused.
Epps, Evans, Frizzell, Froelich, Rep. Froelich,
Excused.
Garcia, Representative Garcia,
Excused.
Gonzalez Gutierrez, Rep. Gonzalez Gutierrez,
Excused.
Hamrick, Hartsook, Herod, Rep. Herod,
Excused.
Holtorf, Judah, Representative Judah,
Excused.
got her. Joseph, Kip, Leader, Lindsay, Linstead, Luck, Lukens, Representative Lukens,
Excused.
Lynch, Mabry, Marshall, Martinez, Morrow,
Here.
McCormick, McLaughlin, Michelson Janae, Ortiz, Representative Ortiz,
Excused.
Parenti, Puglisi, Ricks,
I'm practicing.
Representative Ricks.
There,
Ricks is excused. Sharbini,
there.
Rep. Sharbini.
Excused.
Sirota, Snyder, Soper, Story,
And I love Exum so there. He's my
Rep. Story,
Sid.
Excused.
Taggart, Titone, Valdez A,
Oh, I see. I had it off.
Rep. Valdez,
Excused.
Velasco, Rep. Velasco,
Excused.
Vigil, Weinberg, Weissman, Wilford, Wilson, Winter,
I'm
Woodrow,
always forever polishing off my camera lenses.
Young,
They're always dirty.
and Madam Speaker.
Here.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Shebo.
Oh, they're so not supposed to be. in the chamber.
You know, I'm handsome. I'm not quite that handsome. So. Is that right? 57? With 57 present, 8 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, colleagues, we need to pay attention here because this is how it will work today. Because we failed miserably yesterday, and third time was not a charm. So let's pass the journal on behalf of my granddog. So please display his handsome face.
Aww.
So I move that the journal of Wednesday the 19th, 2023 be approved as corrected by the chief clerk.
Members, you've heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye!
All those opposed, no.
Come on,
The
ayes.
motion is adopted. Representative
Thank you.
McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No dogs for this one. Education Committee, we are meeting at adjournment today. 1239, 1291, 202, 007. That's 007 for those of you who are keeping track. And 205.
Representative Kipp.
Thank you, members of Energy and Environment. We will be meeting up on adjournment today in the Old State Library, and we will be hearing bills HB 23-1282, HB 23-1281, SB 23-186, SB 23-16, and HB 23-1294.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the following bills be added to the special orders calendar at 9:12 a.m. House Bill 1242, 1240, 1222, 1133, 1278, 1270, 1271, and 1199.
The bills listed by the Majority Leader will be added to the special orders calendar at 9:12 a.m. Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez, Representative McCormick. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the House will now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders. Representative McCormick will take the chair.
Go. The committee will now come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the Cote rule is relaxed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 60 until tomorrow.
Senate Bill 60 is laid over until tomorrow. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 23-1242.
House Bill 1242 by Representatives Basenecker and Joseph, also Senator Cutter, concerning water used in oil and gas operations.
Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1242, the Energy and Environment Committee report and the Appropriations Committee report.
Everyone in the room, please quiet down because it's almost too hard for us to hear. Thank you very much. To the Appropriations report. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Appropriations Committee, they approved the appropriation, and just a note that the bill is paid for both on the COGCC side of things and the CDPHE side of things via cash funds.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations report? Seeing none, the question before us is approval of the Appropriations report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations report is passed. To the Energy and Environment report. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in committee, we adopted a strike below to the bill. So in effect, today, the committee report will be the bill that we are speaking to. My gratitude to my co-prime Rep. Joseph for going on this journey with us and the work that we intend to do. So the introduced version of the bill changed significantly, but we're really pleased with where the bill ended up as a result of the committee work and the committee report. Overall, 1242 seeks to reduce fresh water use in oil and gas operations and increase the recycling and reuse of produced water while avoiding any unintended consequences, emissions or otherwise, along the way. And so my co-prime has a couple of the key goals that are included in that legislation. I'll turn it over to her, and then we've got a few amendments to move to get the bill in a little better shape.
Just one moment, and again, people in the room, please take your conversations off to the side. It's already getting too loud again. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our intent in this bill is to make sure the water that we do have remains clean. Given the scarcity of water in Colorado and downriver from our state, it is necessary to take immediate action to preserve this water. Currently, oil and gas development in the Denver-Julesburg Basin uses mostly clean fresh water. There is no reason why fresh water is necessary for drilling. However, in the Permian Basin in Texas, less than 10% of the water used in oil and gas development is fresh water, and operators rely mostly on recycled and produced water for their needs. And I think this is an important bill, and I ask for an aye vote on the committee report and ultimately the bill. Thank you.
Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move L11 to House Bill 1242, to the committee report.
And ask that it be
And ask that it be
displayed.
properly displayed.
That has been properly moved. We are waiting for it to be displayed. All right, L11 is displayed to the amendment. Rep. Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we stripped out the legislative declaration that was originally in the bill. This restores portions of the legislative declaration that in particular speak to the area and time of drought we are in the state of Colorado, and then the goals of the bill, including the goals of the consortium. And I just want to mention as well that in relation to the consortium, the goals there are really, I think, important to note that we intend for them not to be a party to rulemaking. We intend for them not to have voting authority or to alter or change statute or rules set forth as a result of rulemaking. They're really designed to be a research and data-driven organization that submits reports to state agencies. They are bound to mission change as established in 181, and they will also be required to release a minority or dissenting opinion with any data they put forward. So we think that's just an important clarification as well as the legislative declaration on the whole.
Is there further comment on the Energy and Environment report? Or on the amendment, I'm sorry. Seeing none, the question oh, and also, I just want to remind everyone that this is a two-page amendment that was put on your desk on April 19th. So, seeing no further discussion on L11, the question before us is the adoption of L11 to the Energy and Environment report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The L11 is adopted to the Energy and Environment report. Any further amendments? Rep. Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L7 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That has been properly moved, and we will wait for it to be displayed. And as a reminder, this also was on your desks on April 19th, being longer than one page. It is now properly displayed to the amendment. Rep. Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment does a couple key things. One, it adjusts dates in conversation with all our stakeholders and COGCC. That is the majority of the amendment that you see before us. It also makes clear that the Produced Water Consortium is to make recommendations that are protective of public health, safety, and welfare, the environment, and wildlife.
Any further discussion on L7? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L7 to the Energy and Environment Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L7 is adopted to the Energy and Environment report. Rep. Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L9 and ask that it be properly displayed.
All right, we will wait for that to be displayed. All right, we have L9 before us. Rep. Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this makes a couple key changes to the consortium makeup. And again, I'd like to reiterate that the consortium is a non-voting body and really designed to be an apolitical organization to provide data and research to COGCC and other state agencies. It makes sure that we have 6 either DI or EJ folks on the consortium, and those are appointed by the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, 3 from each chamber.
Is there further discussion on L9? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L9 to the Energy and Environment Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Somebody? Anybody? All those opposed? No? Okay, the ayes have it. L9 is adopted to the Energy and Environment report. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L10 and ask that it be properly displayed.
All right, we will wait for that to be displayed.
Yes. I'd like you to consider it. We're almost done.
All right, L10 is before us. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment came about as a result of stakeholding with the Southern Ute Tribe, and we feel it's an important clarification in terms of the role and scope of the consortium. It also adds some language noting the appointments that are already included in the bill, and then make sure that any reports or analysis that the consortium engages in is provided to state agencies and in our SMART Act hearings. And we ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion on L10? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L10 to the Energy and Environment Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L10 is adopted to the Energy and Environment report. To the bill. No, to the report. Yes, Assistant Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, sponsors, for the amendments that you brought that really do make this bill a better bill. We do have a couple of other amendments that make a few more tweaks to make the bill even better than the better that you've done. With that, Madam Chair, I move L013 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Okay, that L13 is now displayed. Representative Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All this amendment does is amend the Energy and Environment Committee report to strike lines 12 and 13 on page 6. regarding industries associated with produced water and substitute the oil and gas industry with one member appointed from each of the following basins. These basins are oil and gas basins that need to be part of these conversations, and really appreciate the sponsors for working with them to make sure their voice is being heard in these discussions. And those basins are the Denver-Julesburg Oil and Gas Basin, the Piceance Oil and Gas Basin, the San Juan Oil and Gas Basin, and the Raton Oil and Gas Basin. And I would urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Further discussion on L13. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We ask for an aye vote on this particular amendment and thank Minority Leader Puglisi for bringing this amendment forward. And also, ultimately, we want a bill, and also we want the consortium to be inclusive. So ultimately, this particular amendment just makes the bill better. Please vote yes.
All right, further discussion on L13 to the Energy and Environment Committee report. Seeing none, all those in favor of L13, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L13 is adopted. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L14 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, that's a proper motion, and it is now before us. Representative Wilson.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the bill sponsors for working with us on this amendment. This amendment itself clarifies what we're looking for in the report. Originally, it just required the source of the water, which can be kind of vague, so we clarified that we want to know if it's water that is used for industrial, commercial, municipality, or agricultural water. That way, as we look at the numbers, we can see where those particular waters are going. So I would ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Further discussion. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Wilson. We are in agreement with this amendment. We think it is important that the sources of water be reported in aggregate so we can have a better understanding of water acquisition in our state, and at the same time we understand that there's concerns about making private data public, and this is a good way to get at that piece of data that I think informs future decisions. We would ask for an aye vote, and I thank you for your work on this.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I also rise in support of this amendment. I think we need to understand that particularly in the district that I represent in East Weld County, a lot of the water that's going to the oil and gas industry is getting diverted from agriculture. And I would even, as a representative of agriculture, want to know what that was statistically, just to get an idea of, in general terms, what that is. I don't want to infringe on private property rights in any way. I know that those people that hold water, they can choose to use it in agriculture or use it in some other way, but it would be a good idea to know as we talk about what is happening with Colorado's water and how do we sustain our agricultural sectors in those industries in agriculture as we move forward in the years and decades ahead, because that is something we have to really look at.
Further discussion on L14. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L14 to the Energy and Environment Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Representative Winter. Oh, to the report. L14 is adopted to the committee report. To the committee report, Representative Winter.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'd like to move Amendment L015 to the committee report and ask that it properly be displayed.
That's a proper motion. It is now before us to the amendment. Representative Winter.
I think this is a good faith amendment. It removes just set dates. And getting rid of arbitrary dates is a good thing. I think one thing we need to move towards is instead of having that one-size-fits-all approach, we're actually going to take a look at the data. We're going to let the consortium analyze what their actual findings are and then make a judgment based upon that. And I appreciate the bill sponsors doing this because I think it's important that we just don't set dates and run to the date. We actually try to do what's right. So I urge an aye vote on this, and thank you.
Further discussion on L15. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague for bringing this amendment forward. I think it makes sense. The whole goal of the consortium and really the process overall is to have a data-driven, scientific-backed data process where we can really make good recommendations in terms of increasing reuse and recycling of produced water. This is a good amendment that gets us there, and I think there are shared values inside of this conversation which are reflected in this amendment. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on L15. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L15 to the Energy and Environment Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L15 is adopted to the Energy and Environment Committee report. To the committee report. Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just close with this. I appreciate the bipartisan work on this bill. I really do feel that this bill will get at some key goals in terms of transparency, both in water acquisition and also in what happens to produced water, while really prioritizing those public health and safety and welfare pieces that are, I think, important to the state of Colorado. It's important to note here, though, as well, that it is absolutely our intent for the consortium to be a collaborative, research-based entity designed to only give recommendations about reuse of water first and foremost on the pad, even before considering off-pad use. As such, we believe that the consortium needs to be aggressive in its mission to recommend ways to significantly reduce the fresh water and increase the recycled water and reuse of water in an iterative and consistent way. We think the bill with the committee report as amended gets at that goal, and we thank you for your consideration. We'd ask for an aye vote.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo the sponsors' points on this, that as we move forward with how we're going to use our water resources best, it is necessary that we make sure that we account for and are understanding how each resource is being used and where and for what, so that we can make better decisions in the future. Thank you.
Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to the amendment we talked about earlier, why it's so exciting is because in my district we have the Raton Basin, and I've actually went into the field and seen what the produced water does. There's wetlands, there's marshlands, the wildlife, the water's so clean coming off of that methane. The wildlife use it. We before the rules changed, we actually used it to keep the dust down on our county roads. We need it for fire mitigation when we're fighting fires. With the drought that we're in, we have to look at this water. It makes no sense to put good water back in the ground when it can be used, especially with the conditions that we're in. So I'd like to thank you again for giving us that grace and looking at data instead of the one-size-fits-all. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Energy and Environment report. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Energy and Environment report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Energy and Environment report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor to have presented this bill before you with Representative Basenecker. This is a great bill. Ultimately, we have water issues in Colorado, and this is a great bill that will help us in figuring out how to keep and conserve our fresh water. So I ask for an aye vote for this particular bill, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion on House Bill 1242. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of 1242 as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. 1242 as amended is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1240.
House Bill 1240 by Representatives Brown and Amabile, also Senator Fenberg, concerning a sales and use tax exemption for construction and building materials used for repairing and rebuilding residential structures damaged or destroyed by a declared wildfire disaster in 2020, 2021, or 2022.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1240 and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the Appropriations report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Appropriations Committee, we passed an amendment that gives the Department of Revenue some money to administer this program. I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the bill, we are going to have, I have 4 different amendments that I'm going to offer. I'm going to start by moving L004 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Thank you. One moment. We will wait for that to be displayed.
I gave it to Matt.
And it is before us and legible.
Great.
To the amendment, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment, as do the next 4, help to clarify the scope of the program to make it into a retrospective refund for people rebuilding their homes in the event of a natural disaster, and clarify the language what a building permit is and how the department will utilize it. So this amendment specifically includes language about building permits, the estimated construction costs, and what a qualified homeowner means. And I will ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on L4. Seeing Representative Frizzell.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you too, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to, this is a lot to process, and so I just wanted to kind of go through this amendment quickly and make sure that we're all understanding, at least I am, the purpose of the various strikes and insertions of this amendment. So it looks like we're going to start on page 3 of the bill, line 12. Strike exemptions. The General Assembly and the state auditor shall measure the effectiveness of the exemption. That's exemption. Okay, good. And then page 3, line 13. Strike subsections 3A and 3B of. Okay. So then it will read, the General Assembly and the state auditor shall measure the effectiveness of the exemption allowed by this section based on the number. All right. And then the next line 4 of the amendment says, page 3, line 16, strike subsection 6 of. So it reads, the number and amount of all refund claims allowed pursuant to this section. And then again, we're inserting on page 3, after line 21. So it would read, as used in this section unless the context otherwise requires. So here we are defining what a building permit is. Building permit means the document or documents issued by a local government to a qualified homeowner showing the estimated amount. Building permit means the document or documents issued by a local government to a qualified homeowner showing the estimated amount of tax collected, if any, in connection with rebuilding or repairing the qualified homeowner's. So I question this actually because I'm guessing that in the context of this bill, that's what a building permit means, but in a general context, I don't think that they're considering the repair or rebuilding as part of a building permit. So perhaps the bill sponsors could speak to this in a general sense with the definition of building permit, and if this is putting in statute building permits specifically around rebuilding or repairing a qualified homeowner's residential structure. Anyway, we'll move on. Line 11 of the amendment, re-letter succeeding paragraphs accordingly. Okay, we got that. Line 12 of the amendment is page 3 after line 26, insert. So we're still on page 3, but we're at the bottom, and we're inserting another definition. So, as defined, estimated construction and building materials cost means the cost amount used by the local government to collect estimated use tax in connection with the issuance of a building permit. If no estimated use tax has been collected, estimated construction and building materials cost means half of the total contract price or total cost for rebuilding or repairing a qualified residential structure. Okay. And then line 21 of this amendment goes to page 4. On page 4, we are striking lines 4 through 7, which is a definition of qualified homeowner or contractor. So as the bills exist, qualified homeowner or contractor means a homeowner or contractor employed by a homeowner who has been issued a wildfire rebuild exemption certificate by a local government pursuant to subsection 5 of this section. So we are changing this definition to just reflect a qualified homeowner. Means that a homeowner that is rebuilding or repairing or has employed a contractor to rebuild or repair a qualified residential structure that the homeowner owned at the time of a declared wildfire disaster. And then in the amendment, line 26 is also adding a definition for qualified residential structure. So qualified residential structure means a residential structure that was damaged or destroyed by a declared wildfire disaster. So I appreciate the specificity, that's a hard word this morning, of these two definitions because they are specific to wildfire disasters and not a blanket statement on all disasters, which would be outside of the scope of this bill because this bill is specific to wildfire disasters. So I think I have talked my way through this amendment and understand it better. I do kind of question, I want to make sure that that the building permit as defined in the as defined in this amendment is really just specific to this particular bill and not more broad-reaching through Colorado statute. So I would love some clarification from the sponsors on that. It's probably a rookie mistake question, but I appreciate their response. Thank you.
Further discussion on L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L004. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L004 is adopted. To the bill. Are we on the committee? To the bill. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L005 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That's a proper motion, and it is now before us to the amendment.
Thank you very much. And I want to, first of all, appreciate the work of my colleague from Douglas County to fully understand the amendments. I've got a couple more coming. This amendment strikes language related to contractors because the way that we are amending the bill, it will make contractors no longer eligible to claim the exemption. The exemption will only be related to homeowners. And then it also makes other conforming amendments related to these changes so that it is a retrospective refund and it is defined specifically for homeowners. So I ask for an aye vote on L005.
Further discussion on L005. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L005. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L005 is adopted. To the bill. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L006 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion, and it is now before us to the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So this amendment substitutes language in the existing bill for specific and more detailed instructions clarifying how this refund will be claimed by qualified homeowners. We've worked specifically with the Department of Revenue on this particular amendment and all of these amendments to make sure that the bill can be as easily implemented as possible so that homeowners can get this tax refund as quickly as possible to help them with their rebuilding costs. So I will ask for an aye vote on L006.
Further discussion on L006. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am very grateful for the bill sponsors working on clarifying language for this bill, but I have to express my dismay at the number of
Hang on a
amendments.
second, Representative Frizzell. It is getting a little loud in here again, folks, so if you could please whisper or go off the floor for your conversations. Thank you. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, I'm going to, in order to understand the impacts of these amendments, I need to kind of work my way through it. So I am grateful for everyone's patience. This amendment is going to look towards page 5, striking lines 1 through 9. So it's striking except as otherwise provided in subsection 6 of this section to claim an exemption allowed by subsection 3A or 3B of this section, a qualified homeowner or a contractor employed by such a homeowner must provide a copy of the wildfire rebuild exemption certificate issued pursuant to subsection 5 of this section to every retailer from which the qualified homeowner or contractor is purchasing materials that are exempt under this section. Okay. So we're getting rid of that language, and we are substituting everything on this page. So we are substituting with, beginning on line 2, 3A, the sale, storage, use, or consumption of construction and building materials used directly in rebuilding or repairing a qualified homeowner's qualified residential structure is exempt from taxation under parts 1 and 2 of this Article 26 as set forth in this section. And then continues with line 7, paren B. The exemption created in subsection 3A of this section shall be administered solely as a refund allowed to qualified homeowners. So I'm guessing that they're pulling out the contractor portion because only the homeowners are able to.
All right, folks. This is like the 5th time I've asked you to be quiet. So please, if you need to talk, please go off the floor and have your conversations off the floor. Thank you. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it looks to me that in this second paragraph, we are ensuring that only the exemption can be applied for by a homeowner, not a contractor, and specifies further that no retailer may be exempt. No retailer may exempt any sale. Okay. And then beginning on line 12, the exemption created in subsection 3A of this section applies only to the state sales and use taxes levied pursuant to this Article 26. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the exemption shall not apply to the sales or use taxes levied by any local government, including any city, town, county, special purpose district, or limited purpose governmental entity. So that is ensuring that this only applies to state sales taxes, not any other tax that's collected locally. Then beginning on line 19, we are inserting a new section 4A. A qualified homeowner may claim a refund allowed pursuant to subsection 3 of this section for each qualified residential structure for which the qualified homeowner obtains a building permit and a wildfire rebuild exemption certificate issued by a local government in accordance with subsection 5 of this section. So as I'm understanding this, you could just specifying that the homeowners can't claim a refund on any other structure other than the qualified residential structure. And then we're getting close to the bottom on line 25B. We're going to insert the amount of a refund claimed pursuant to this section shall be equal to 2 91/100% of the estimated construction and building materials cost for repairing or rebuilding the qualified residential structure that is subject to the building, that is the subject of the building permit and wildfire rebuild exemption certificate. So we're capping the amount of the refund, and again, I would ask the bill sponsors to clarify that particular point, that we are capping the amount of the refund. And then on line 31, we are inserting a qualified homeowner must submit a claim for refund on the form and in the manner prescribed by the executive director. The claim for refund must include the wildfire rebuild exemption certificate issued in accordance with subsection 5 of this section and a true and correct copy of each building permit identified in the wildfire rebuild exemption certificate. Okay. And then the last, we are going to be inserting the 3-year application deadline in section 26703 2D for a sales tax refund or refund of any use tax collected by a vendor does not apply to a claim for refund made pursuant to this section. A claim for refund made pursuant to this section must be filed on or before June 30th, 2028. So that is when this exemption, the sales tax exemption period ends. Okay. I think I understand this better now. Again, I appreciate y'all's patience for letting me talk through this. I would like the bill sponsors to address my question on the cap of refund being equal to 2 91/100% of the estimated construction and building materials cost. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague from Douglas County. I appreciate her diligence in working through this amendment. The cap on the refund amount is set equal to the state sales and use tax rate. So 2 91/100% is the state use tax rate, and it's applied to the estimated construction building materials cost. So that will be equal to the amount of state tax that the homeowner has paid, and that's why it is written in that particular way. So I appreciate your working through that, and I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on L006? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L006. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L006 is adopted. To the bill, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have one more amendment, L007. I move L007 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion, and it is now displayed to the amendment. Representative Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This amendment is another amendment that will provide clarifying language that is, again, moving the program from one that could be claimed by a contractor in a prospective way or a homeowner now that can be claimed as a refund. It is moving the amendment, it is making conforming amendments that clarify that we're using building permits now and that we're striking other language related to prospective exemptions and contractors. And so I'd ask for an aye vote on this particular amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion on L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L007. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L007 is adopted. To the bill, Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know I was up here yesterday on a different fire-related matter, but I represent a district that has a lot of fires. And if people have to pay this in one of these big disasters, all of a sudden you're rebuilding 1,000 homes or 500 homes, and that's kind of a windfall to the state that wasn't in the budget, that no one was counting on, and that is really would make a very big difference for each individual homeowner who would save that amount of money on their rebuild costs. And most of the people in these fire disasters are underwater, partly because if you lose your home in one of these disasters, it costs more to rebuild because everybody's busy, because building material costs go up, because it takes longer, which costs money. And so this is a very modest solution that gives people some relief that is meaningful for them, that is really just taking away from the state money that they weren't counting on getting anyway. And I will urge you to vote yes.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate everyone working with us as we work through those different amendments. You know, this program is particularly important to the community that I represent that lost almost 1,000 homes, or more than, I should say, 1,100 homes due to the Marshall Fire. But it applies to fires over the last several years. And it is important that the state do its part in helping to make sure that people can get home. In my community, the cities and the county have already waived the local sales and use tax on the rebuilding of homes in an attempt to address what is really a crisis of underinsurance. You know, when people were sold insurance policies, they thought that they had enough money, and it turns out they don't. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars underinsured, and what I've been told by my residents is that every little bit helps. And this use tax refund will go a long ways towards making sure that people can come home to the communities that they love. So along with my co-sponsor, I will ask for an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Further discussion on House Bill 1240. Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've lost count in this chamber the number of times I've heard about equity. This bill talks about a specific community because it suffered a disaster. Got it. How many disasters are around this state and around this country that get this kind of treatment? None. What organizations exist to fund people for disasters? It's called FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. We've seen this countless times. So now in a specific area, we want to give a tax break to folks. So let's just look at Boulder County. Approximate income, somewhere around $123,000. That's about 15% higher than the rest of the state of Colorado. These homes, anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000. So we're not talking about a community that is hurting for money. Now, I will tell you, I went through Hurricane Isabel when I was stationed out east in Maryland. Crushed our house. It was condemned. So whose responsibility is it to have enough insurance? Is it the state? The answer would be no. Is it the insurance company? You might be able to make a little bit of argument there. But who does it belong to? It belongs to the homeowner. Wow, think about that. Responsibility of the homeowner. The person who owns the property, maybe they should do their homework. Maybe they should do their reviews. Maybe they should stay on top of things. But instead, we're going to give it and say, oh, we're going to give you a tax break. We're not talking about a poor community. We're talking about a wealthy community. Would we be given this tax break if this happened out in rural Colorado or in other communities? I think not. So why on earth are we doing it in a community that certainly has the affordability to pay for things? They talk about, oh, every bit makes a difference. Well, how much money are we talking about here? So if you just crunch the numbers with the 2.9% sales tax there, somewhere around $5,600, maybe a little bit more, maybe $6,000, maybe a little bit more difference on a $750,000 home. $6,000 sales tax on a $750,000 home. Let's do that one more time. $6,000 sales tax on a $750,000 home. And these people are making well over $100,000 a year. And we haven't, I can't find it in the bill. I didn't see it in any amendments. And they're doing these rebuilds. What about upgrades? What about expansions? Is that covered? Is that prohibited? Where does that come into? I don't see it. Every disaster I ever worked, it was the homeowner's responsibility in coordination with existing agencies, most notably FEMA. Do we do this for small businesses? Nope. This just says qualified homeowners. What about small businesses that were destroyed? What about small businesses that were impacted? You know, we don't give any tax credits. I've seen it countless times in finance. We don't give tax credits to teachers, even though we promised it to them. We don't give tax credits to small businesses that are trying to support our communities. But we want to give it to somebody on a $750,000 home? Let's go a $500,000 home. Really? Where does that evolve into this equity I hear all the time into this house? There's nothing equitable about it because it goes to a specific community for a specific period. That it's their responsibility to anticipate things. You buy insurance, you're betting against yourself. You're hoping you never need to use it, but if you do, you need to have enough. You buy auto insurance. You hope you never need to use it because if you do and your vehicle gets wrecked or totaled, then you need to have the insurance to cover it. Whose responsibility is that? That's yours. But yet, suddenly here, we want to give something for a specific community and a sales tax. Where on earth does that make any sense? Is everybody out? Absolutely. And there were millions that were out under Hurricanes Sandy and Irene, Katrina. And who helped them? FEMA, because that's their job. That's the responsibility of FEMA. And there's all kinds of programs, state and federal out there, but a lot of them at the federal level, that you can apply for, that you can get help on. But we want to create a whole nother system to figure out how to apply for a tax break, how long it's going to last, and for this certain time frame of fires. What else do we have in the state? We have snowstorms. We have the occasional tornadoes. We don't have earthquakes, once in a while, but nothing big. We certainly have flooding. Yet we're not doing that for communities that get destroyed that way because they got to follow all the existing programs that are in place. So why on this specific little community are we creating a carve-out that we don't do for everyone else out there? Everyone else has to follow the standard procedures. They follow FEMA. They follow other systems that are in place to apply for relief. But now we're going to create a carve-out because they say, oh, the state wasn't anticipating it. Well, that's a true statement. No one can anticipate a disaster. If you look on the FEMA website, it talks about being prepared because you never know when one's going to strike. You never know when there's going to be a tornado, a hurricane, a fire, a flood. No one, aside from maybe God, knows when there's going to be a disaster. So what does one have to do? One must take the personal responsibility. I know that's a novel concept at times, but they must take the personal responsibility to have the adequate protection, insurance, and funding and contingencies to go through. When Hurricane Isabel came through and crushed our house, we were on vacation. We got the phone call. It was condemned, came home. Whole house was condemned. Didn't stop us from our day-to-day jobs. Both of my wife and I were in the Army. Didn't stop us from what we had to do. So we had to keep going. Whose job was that? That was my job. That was her job. Where we worked with the insurance company to get it repaired, actually rebuilt, because there was no repairing it. You know, it doesn't matter if the house is burnt to the ground, the trusses are snapped, or it's washed away in a flood. When you're rebuilding, you're rebuilding. The cause of the disaster doesn't matter, but this says for fires. We've had the Thompson floods here. We've had lots of other disasters. We don't deal with that. We don't give exemptions in other parts of the state. We don't give exemptions when there's grassland fires. We don't give exemptions when there's fires up in the high country, when businesses are working timber or mining. We give it to this community. Are those people suffering and hurting? Absolutely. I've been there. I get it. But I'm the one that had to work out of it just like everyone else has to do in every other disaster I've worked. New York, Florida, Louisiana, California, Washington, Oregon, they see disasters all the time, fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes. I've worked a number of them, and the people are responsible for applying through the existing systems to get their homes rebuilt or get their businesses back online. And now the state of Colorado, we're proposing that we do something specific for a very small, select community. Where is the equity in that? If somebody doesn't plan correctly and they don't save or they don't have enough insurance, I was not aware that suddenly that's the state's responsibility to fix. That's the personal responsibility. If you don't have enough insurance on your vehicle and it gets totaled, or you don't have the correct amount of insurance, you're the one that has to pay for that. Now, replacing a vehicle is not as much as replacing a house. But if you need a vehicle and you need it right now, you better have a contingency. And there are places to apply for some of those immediate small loans. There's banks, there's other agencies that you can get to apply for things. But we got to establish another bureaucracy, another system, another methodology for revenue and everybody else to do things when they got a million other things to do in this state. And now we're adding to that job description, that bureaucracy, that personnel, that more money that we're spending, when there are already existing systems out there. It's great that they're standing up for their constituents. That's their job. And they're to be commended for that. And it's my job to get up here to talk about everything else that's missing. We're supposed to pass laws in this chamber, statewide, that helps people or promotes things. And now we're targeting specific communities for specific fires for a few years. 20 to 22, let's see, 2020, 2021, and 2022 declared wildfires. What about declared floods? Other declared disasters. We've had lots of disasters in this state and other parts of the state. Other communities, Colorado Springs, up in the mountains, Western Slope. We've had flooding. We've had blizzards and snowstorms. And yet those businesses, those people are responsible for fixing the disasters that happen in their communities. And now we want the state to give an exemption for somewhere around $6,000 of sales tax on anywhere between $500,000 to a $750,000 home. I personally think that's ludicrous. If you can afford that house, you can afford the $6,000 in tax. When we had to rebuild our house, we had to pay the differences. But I had the insurance, and we kept looking at it to make sure that we were covered. But the inconvenience of having to find a different place to live, the inconvenience of still having to do your job while you don't have your house, the inconvenience that half of your belongings are destroyed, water damage beyond repair, to include clothes, my case, uniforms, things that had to go to the cleaners just so I could go to work and do my job. That was my responsibility to get done. I still had to show up for work in a clean uniform and do my job. And yet, we managed to do it, just like everyone else does that goes through disasters. Sometimes it takes a long, long time to get it straight. There are people from Katrina that are still suffering. There are people from Hurricanes Sandy and Irene that are suffering. There are communities across this country in the Midwest from floods, on the West Coast from fires and earthquakes, the East Coast from hurricanes, the Gulf from hurricanes, that have been devastated over and over. And whose responsibility is it to pick themselves back up and get their jobs and their homes rebuilt? It's those individuals. Here a few weeks ago, hurricanes ripped through parts of the South, Midwest. A lot of people were killed in that. A lot of homes and businesses were destroyed. But whose responsibility is it? Those homes and businesses with the insurance companies and the federal agencies that are involved. Again, back to FEMA. And there's multiple sub-agencies. So why here are we talking about something for a specific community? If we want to do something that applies across the state, great, I'm all ears. If we want to look at something that helps get businesses going across the state, I'm all ears. I'd love to sit down and have that conversation. We want to do tax credits that are going to help small businesses get up and running across the state and increase employment and revenue. That sounds great. Love to have that conversation. But if we're going to focus on a specific community for a specific set of time and a specific exemption that can easily afford it, and if they didn't plan, well, guess what? If I don't plan, that's my fault. I don't get to blame someone else for my failure to plan, for my failure to save. That's my responsibility. That's my job. And if someone else doesn't plan accordingly and doesn't save accordingly, that's their responsibility. I don't think Mother Nature intentionally went in there and to wipe out an entire community and poke them in the eye and say, here, you deserve this. No one deserves to be in a disaster. No one deserves to have their home destroyed. I know, I've been there. I've watched the house condemned, or return home to a condemned house. At the same time, it was my responsibility to figure out how to leverage what was existing and get out of it and get things rebuilt. And it took over a year to get that home rebuilt. And in that meantime, once they got one of the rooms cleaned up, it's where we lived. There were some things that were lost that you can't replace in fires. There's mementos. That stuff can never be replaced. Furniture, homes, brick and mortar can be rebuilt, restructured. It can be made whole again. Some of those mementos, sadly, are gone forever. And that is tragic. But that happens all the time, and people stand up and they keep going. The precedent that we're setting here for giving it to a specific area, for a specific fire, I don't see as being warranted. The state has a responsibility to help the people follow existing systems, existing programs that are out there. FEMA does the same thing. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, does things to help businesses. I don't see us giving any tax breaks to businesses. And up here, we constantly vote down tax breaks for teachers, Department of Military Veterans Affairs, law enforcement, other communities. But now we're going to carve out this community and give a tax break to approximately 1,100 homeowners. And I don't know the numbers of the other thousands of people that suffered from disasters across this state, but they all had to work their way out of it. They all had to follow the existing programs. There's nothing that is equitable about this bill. There's nothing fair. There's nothing that makes fiscal sense. There certainly is nothing that helps businesses work back in that community. I urge a no vote on the bill. Thank you.
Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I actually have some experience with wildfire. We have had fires in Douglas County. Thankfully, nothing very severe. We've lost homes here and there, had land burned. We have a pretty robust fire mitigation programs, but we also have robust fire fighting programs for wildfire. And in fact, Douglas County government contracts annually with an air support group who literally is on standby and can jump in very quickly. But my experience was with the Hayman fire, which was a little over 20 years ago now. And my experience was that I was actually living in the southwest portion of Douglas County, south of Castle Rock, south and west of Castle Rock, west of Larkspur, in a community that butts right up to Pike National Forest. And we were evacuated. And not only did I evacuate my family, the pets, tried to get as many things out of the house as possible in a very short time, but I had to also evacuate my elderly parents from their home, which was close by mine. And it was a very scary thing. I remember standing in my driveway and there were pine needles falling down from the sky and ash, and the color of the sky was a really hideous color. It was smoky. And I remember they called the evacuation about 8 o'clock at night. And I had a sheriff's deputy come to my door. And I said, "Is it time?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And I said, "Okay, we're ready." So I get it. I get the trauma that these folks in the Marshall Fire had to have experienced, except what they experienced was much, much worse, because we had a little time to plan. We suspected we were going to be evacuated. They had no warning whatsoever, none. They not only lost their houses and their belongings, they lost pets, they lost automobiles, they lost everything. And I will tell you that in committee, when I heard this bill, I reflected back on my own experience and experience of other people that I've known. And I voted for this bill. Because I remember when I was evacuated from my home it was 7 days. I went to work every day, made sure my parents were okay. I was able to get my pets into a local boarding facility because they couldn't stay at the hotel. And we were okay. But these people's lives are not okay. They're still trying to figure this out. It's been over a year. It's been about almost a year and a half. And so I will tell you that my vote in committee was very much reflective of my own experience. I did have to think about this because I had a lot of questions, and I even had a bit of a conversation with one of the bill sponsors because, one of the things that we heard after the Marshall Fire was the number of people donating to the Boulder Community Foundation and the amount of money that was raised. And I keep wondering, and I still wonder to this day, what happened to all that money? Has it been paid out to these folks who have been so incredibly impacted? What has that gone to? And my understanding is a lot of it still hasn't been paid out, and I'm kind of curious why that is, but that's not for somebody from Douglas County to reason why. And the other question I have is, we've had some really, really bad fires in this state, really devastating. And I hearken to, because I feel like the Marshall Fire is kind of similar to what happened with Waldo Canyon in El Paso County, which was, it literally devastated an entire subdivision. It took these people's homes away. And we didn't legislate after that. We didn't jump in and say, hey, we've got to help those people down in Waldo Canyon. Or we didn't jump in and say, we've got to help the people in Manitou Springs because the after effects of the Waldo Canyon fire were so traumatic to this fire was so traumatic to the soil in the area that it became hydrophobic, meaning it couldn't absorb water. So when we had of course, subsequent rains, there were mudslides everywhere through the streets of Manitou Springs. What did we do for those folks? Did we legislate? We did not. So I do look at the fairness of this, and I am concerned about that. You know, as a conservative, I have to tell you that I like that people might not have to pay taxes. Because I'm a conservative. I'm okay with that. But the problem is this isn't being applied equally. It's not being applied to the people who lose their homes in a flood or a mudslide. I'll tell you one thing that I saw that it's stuck with me for all of these years, because I was in the assessor's office when the Hayman fire blazed through multiple counties. And I went up into the area impacted in Douglas County with some of my appraisers. And this is a remote area of Douglas County. It's pretty hard to get to some of these places, but one of the properties that we visited was that of a gentleman who, it's kind of like an unbelievably remote place to do business, but he was manufacturing medical equipment in this small warehouse facility that he had, and it's up in the middle of the National Forest area. And it was a very high-tech machine shop, or it had been. And we went in, and he has, I can't even imagine how expensive this equipment was that he had owned and that he was using to manufacture these medical devices. But there was 3 feet of mud covering the floor that had come through in a mudslide. It was a total loss. His equipment was gone. His building was gone because it was all buckled. The after effects of these very, very horrific fire events are nothing but a footnote a lot of times in these conversations that we have, yet they need to be part of the conversations. The flooding events need to be part of the conversation. So that's why I am having some heartburn. I really go back and forth on this bill because I like the idea of doing right by these folks who have been so horrifically traumatized. And I also like that it's speaking to not only the new construction rebuilds, but those that are having to do significant construction and repair on their homes. So their homes didn't burn, but a lot of these homes are having to be pretty much gutted because of the smoke and some of the toxicity of the smoke that really has permeated all the surfaces of these properties. Those are kind of it's kind of easy to see, oh, this house burned and the foundation isn't even usable. The whole thing is a total loss. You have to start from scratch. But these are houses that probably, they look pretty fine from the outside. But inside, they have to be gutted. And I like that this bill does take that into account, because we talk about the 1,100 homes that were lost, but we don't talk about those folks. I also look at the amount of the fiscal note on this, and not thrilled about that either. And while there's significant dollar ranges associated with this particular bill. Somewhere between 4 and 8 million, somewhere between 3 and almost 6 million, and this goes out to 2028, as we discussed previously. And while it addresses wildfire events that occurred in a specific time frame between 2020 and 2022, It doesn't talk about any of those other folks. What if your house burned in 2019? You don't get a benefit? What happens if we have a robust wildfire season this year? It could happen. Sure, we have great snowpack, but we all know what Colorado's like in the summertime. It doesn't speak to that. I just am very concerned about the equality or the equity of the application of these funds. Because we have heard, in finance at least, bill after bill come through really addressing this particular fire event. And some of it's in response to the fire event. I think all of them are. But that's one of many, many fire events that we've had in this state and that we will continue to have in this state. So if we're if we're really going to try to talk about helping people when they've lost so much, when they have been traumatized so much, I think we have to have a much bigger picture view. Rather than picking specific events, specific disasters, specific counties, specific municipalities, we have to make this fair. And right now, I just don't feel like it is. Thank you very much for your attention to my conversation with myself. And I ask for a no vote.
Further discussion on House Bill 1240. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, of course, we're all concerned about what happened and the devastation that occurred. Costs are up. We talked about this yesterday. We talked about the costs increasing yesterday, 2020. What happened in 2020? Why did all the cost and supply chain issues go bonkers in 2020? It's not hard to figure out. Elections have consequences. Fuel prices go up, supply chain issues ensue. You generate a faulty pandemic. All of these things happen. But now there's an issue with, well, the government wasn't expecting that money, but the government's already collected that money, and that's why it's costing $4 to $8 million. And it's not for all communities, it's just for that community. It's just for that very specific community. And it's interesting on that community because, well, for a lot of reasons. But there's one thing that we could do in this body. We could, if you want to eliminate the taxes on, if you want to eliminate the taxes in general on supply materials and all that, and you want to get the economy going, I'm in. I'm in. We'll get that money back. We don't even need to get that money. It's not our money. I looked up tax day yesterday. We're in the 30% now. You can eliminate 1% of the tax from all of Coloradans, and you can give them 3 days back. You can give them 3 days of wages. That'll take care of all this stuff. You want to give people money back? Knock their taxes down. But there are problems. There are definite problems when you start carving out special treatment. I think that's pretty much disallowed in our Constitution, our Colorado Constitution, a little closer to home, the one we ignore first before we ignore the second one. or the original one. And here's another issue that I have with what's going on, because the county in question has, it has a certain reputation. On the tree hugging front. And a lot of these fires are due to forestry mismanagement. The devastation of the fires is due to forestry mismanagement. And those forests were often mismanaged because of ideological purposes, because our forests have grown very well. As we know that carbon dioxide is increasing, and that makes trees grow well, and that's why we have 60% more trees than we did 50 years ago. But here on forestry, that does require actually cutting down trees, because at some point you either need to cut them down or they're going to burn down. And the forestry practices that we've promoted have encouraged them to burn down. And not only burn down so here's an article on that. I've tried for years to lead a conversation about restoring healthy forests, yet I continually look around and nobody's there, even with the constant news showing the despair of people losing their homes to forest fires. Most Americans remain disconnected, probably because it's not their home. I remember in 1965, skip that. This year, Colorado lost some of its most iconic scenery, perhaps forever. Will the state take management of these national forests and parks more seriously when some of the most cherished natural wonders go up? Or continue to ignore the inevitable result of poor management choices? I'm going to take a wild guess here. We're going to go with a continue to ignore the inevitable results of poor management choices. Because it's so much better just to take $4 to $8 million from the people of Colorado and pass that money off to one of the wealthiest counties in the entire state. That's the way we roll. That's the way we roll. We'll take that money and we'll give it to the wealthiest county. Second picture I used in a book 7 years ago. It shows beautiful Grand Lake headwaters in Colorado, a quiet and peaceful community with rustic lodges, angling shops, fishing boats, but it also shows the surrounding mountains completely covered with dead trees from the pine outbreak that destroyed millions of acres of our national forest. It was a graphic illustration of a tinderbox left by mismanagement. A tinderbox left by mismanagement. A stern warning of what might happen should those mountains catch fire, and they finally did. The third picture was taken at the town of Estes Park, 45 miles away, and the opposite side of the national park shows fleeing cars evacuating the town, the entire region surrounded by bright orange skies and smoke so thick. Flying over that was very interesting. You could the extent of the fires was unbelievable, and the extent of the smoke. Foresters and others have been talking about catastrophic fires that result from mismanagement for over 20 years. So let's see, if foresters are talking for over 20 years about the dangers of forest mismanagement, and I'm guessing that forest mismanagement was probably pretty much driven by the tree huggers, as they are euphemistically called. So for 20 years, so guess what happens after 20 years of forest mismanagement when the foresters are saying, if you mismanage these forests for a long time, you are going to have massive forest fires. So what happens? Oh, wait. Sure enough, they were right. In 2002, the 4 largest fires from the state history burned all simultaneously. The Hayman Fire, 138,000 acres. Talk about the impact of such fires on precious water supplies, the soils damaged by the calamitous fires without vegetation, and the devastation because the fires burn so hot when they're left to go so long without forestry, practices. Now the fires burn, instead of just burning the trees and then they burn so hot it burns the bio layer off the soil. So that has to be rebuilt first before you can even get into rebuilding the trees. Damaged water supplies, sometimes disastrously. Denver's water supply was endangered for years after 1996 above the Sarasota Springs. About 80% of the city's water supply passes through that reservoir. A mudslide eliminated 3/5 of its water storage capacity. Restoration took a decade, cost users more than $30 million. It was nothing compared to the threat at Grand Lake and Lake Granby. The horrible 2002 records were shattered this year. The Pine Gulch fire destroyed 140,000 acres from the Book Cliffs to the Rhone. The Cameron Peak fire burned 209,000 in the 3 wilderness areas from the Mummy Range down to the headwaters. And another fire destroyed much of the center of National Park, about 193,000 acres at last count. It began on East Troublesome Lake Creek near the Rabbit Ears Range, burned across Pony Creek, through Grand Lake, across Trail Ridge Road, through the Kawanawachi River, Big Meadows, over the Continental Divide, and down the Big Thompson River, all the way to Estes Park, Colorado's most iconic national park. Will never be the same. So here's the problem. We could have maintained a market for that lumber. We could have sequestered all that carbon. That's a great use for forestry.
Representative DeGraff, are we still talking about the tax exemption for construction and building materials?
Well, yes, ma'am, because I'm trying to get to the root cause. It seems this bill is dealing with a very topical aspect of this tragedy when we are refusing to get to the root of the tragedy, and as per normal, that kind of tends to find its way back home. And in this case, the forest mismanagement that is driven by a lot of the activists, which historically, and I don't know in this case, but historically come from the region that we're talking about, have cost the state a great deal. And now we want a special exemption to help with the problem that was potentially, and maybe we should get into it a little bit more. I certainly don't want to ascribe blame where blame is not due, and it's certainly not everybody, but we certainly need to look at the root cause of this issue. We have the root cause, we have why did the costs go up? Why were these people so underinsured? Well, they were underinsured because the fuel costs went up. The supply chain was broken. And why were those happening? Government made those things happen. Those were purely self-inflicted. So then when these homes all of a sudden find themselves upside down in insurance because of ideological intervention, then the people most responsible for the ideological problems, we want to go in and bail out on the backs of the rest of Colorado. And it seems a little bit, I don't think ironic is the right word for it, but it just seems a little bit unjust. Our Constitution does forbid treating groups of people differently. And now we want to carve out a very specific time frame, a very specific. Now, if we want to do this in general, and we want to, even if you want to make it retroactive, but you want to get rid of these taxes across the state where everybody can benefit from them, then I'm in. But during the last 20 years, over 100 million acres of national forest have burned, including the largest forest fires in Colorado so far, and it will take 30 years to treat the 100 million acres still at risk. So we're dealing with a symptom but we're not dealing with a problem. And then usually what we say is like, oh, it was climate change. Well, the only thing that climate change has done in this case is make the trees grow faster. So if you want the trees to grow slower, so the trees grow faster with more carbon dioxide. That's the benefit of carbon dioxide. There's no downside. But we want to just take this and we want to say, well, these forest fires are because of climate change. These forest fires are due to mismanagement by the government. The ideological intervention that our government is doing on this idiocy about carbon dioxide is killing people. It's killing our forests, and it's now, we had the example that the insurance costs went up from like $2,000 to $13,000 for one of our members here. Why? Because of ideological intervention in the market. That's why. Smoke from the fires of the Western Washington immediately, the blame was pointed at climate change. Prior to the recent fires, the 2020 season, prior to the recent fires, the 2020 fire season had been extremely quiet. No matter how the season ends, however, blaming climate change is politics and not science. So I know you're going to say this has nothing to do with this bill, but it does, because this is the root cause of this problem. We have a root cause, and it is faulty ideology. The State Department, we have a forest health crisis in our state, and because of our forest health crisis, we are seeing more catastrophic wildfires. In their forest health plan, they note commercial timber harvesting will be an essential component of restoration efforts. Well, that's been pretty restricted. There's a lot of work to be done in our forests to get them to the point where they are fire resistant. Now, another benefit of carbon dioxide is that it makes plants more drought resistant, so that if it is warmer, they will continue to grow. And of course, that's why we have 60% more vegetation. In recent years, the Governor Inslee recognized this in his term, and he set a goal to increase the average annual statewide treatment of forested lands for forest health and the reduction. So I'm going to have to vote against this bill, not because I don't want to help the people of Boulder, but because it carves out a special treatment for a special reason that was ideologically created essentially by this body, by this building, for good intentions, based on faulty science. And now there's a huge price to pay. And I just don't think that the price should be borne out by the rest of Colorado. Well, one, because it's unconstitutional, and two, because it's just morally wrong. So if we want to help the people of Colorado, then let's take this bill and just make all of the construction, make it all tax-free. Because we're saying right now, what we're saying is making this tax-free will help the economy. It will put money back into the economy, and that's true. $4 to $8 million back in the economy is going to be would be good for the economy, no doubt about it. So why don't we put more in? And the way we could put more in would be by the two bodies, the two things that are never satisfied, give and give. The two leeches that are never satisfied, give and give. I think that's talking about the bodies of government. That we could just start rolling back the taxes, and we could say, you know what, we're going to just not spend more of their money, and we'll leave it in their pockets, and they can deal with this stuff instead of having to run to the government. But I know that's also ideologically unpalatable. We're going to spend the next 20 days spending millions of dollars more every day. And then the way we're going to take the pressure off the citizens of Colorado is by asking them to pay millions of dollars more so we can give them back a fraction. What goes on here is really unconscionable if you think about it. I'm not sure anybody does, but the wildfires, the ideology that presented them, they're all part in the same. I'm sorry that the people of Boulder are hurting from this, but there have been other fires, and this was not presented for anybody. This was not presented for anybody else. If you want to make a bill that gets rid of these taxes for everybody across the state because you want to spur the development, then I'm in. But giving special advantages to the wealthiest counties, that's unjust, it's unconstitutional, it's immoral. So I'll be a no on this, and I hope we can maybe think about some of the things and get some sane tax policy in place and give the people and use the recognition that this bill gives to give the people of Colorado, maybe justify to the people of Colorado getting the heel of legislation off their neck and letting them have that breathing room instead of asking them for money continuously and then doling it out as a privilege. This is the citizens' money. So I'm sorry I cannot vote for this. It's immoral.
Further discussion on House Bill 1240. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the robust discussion on this. This bill applies to fires in 2021, 2020, and 2022, including in counties like Grand County with the East Troublesome Fire, as well as the Cameron Peak Fire in Larimer County and others. So I would ask for an aye vote. It's a good bill. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on House Bill 1240. Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1240 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No! The ayes have it. House Bill 1240 as amended is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1222.
House Bill 1222 by Representatives Duran and Weissman, also Senator Roberts, concerning the jurisdiction of municipal courts to hear domestic violence offenses.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We move House Bill 1222 and the committee report from Judiciary.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think to situate the committee report, it would help if we just lay a little bit of groundwork about what the bill is about, and I think that the committee should hear from Madam Majority Leader for that.
Representative Duran, Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So House Bill 1222 is a bill that I've been working on for several years. As a survivor of domestic violence, I have personal experience with the criminal justice system that is here to protect me, that also has worked against me. Not only do I have my story, but I know numerous other situations where an abuser was allowed to continue their abuse in the municipal system because of the lack of data sharing, no access to victim rights amendment protections, and the lack of firearm removal. The statistics show that the most dangerous time for a survivor is when they leave an abusive partner. 77% of domestic-related homicides occur upon separation, and there is a 75% increase in violence for at least 2 years following separation. Unfortunately for survivors, there are many failures of the criminal legal system with a very low prosecution rate. Survivors are not likely to pursue prosecution when they will have to be re-victimized in court without any meaningful results. Perpetrators often threaten their partner to scare them into not pressing charges. Even when victims press charges, it often only leads to a slap on the wrist for the perpetrator. There have also been instances where the victim is wrongly arrested by police for allegedly perpetrating domestic violence. In Colorado, only 5 of the 271 municipalities still try domestic violence at the muni level. Domestic violence and DUI cases in county court are their bread and butter. They make up a majority of the county court's workload. The cases often are the ones new DAs and folks learn how to become prosecutors through. Myself and my co-prime sponsor, Representative Weissman, brought this bill forward because of 3 main reasons. 1, there is no tracking of data sharing requirement between courts. between municipal courts and higher courts. 2, no access to victim rights amendment protections. And finally, there is no ability to remove firearms from those arrested for domestic violence. This bill is about equity in making sure that when survivors pursue avenues offered by the criminal justice system, they have the same rights, expectations, and safety outcomes. I ask for a yes vote on House Bill 1222.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, members, you've heard the reasons why for the bill. The bill arises out of concerns that have been articulated to the Majority Leader and to me, in some cases going back years, about the experience of some survivors of domestic violence in municipal courts. Again, there's not a large number of municipal courts that take jurisdiction of domestic violence at all. They are some of our largest cities, totaling over 1.5 million people, so it's a serious matter that we're talking about. The introduced bill proposed a very simple yet fundamental solution to completely remove jurisdiction for these offenses from the municipal court level so that they would thereby necessarily be heard instead in county court, and that the experience would be more standardized as to the laws that apply, the way in which domestic violence advocates can be trained on that and be ready to advise survivors. Subsequent to introduction, we continued a lot of detailed meetings with municipal judges, folks from municipalities, from advocacy organizations, and others, and we did decide on an alternate approach. That is what the committee report, which I will now speak to in a bit more detail, sets forward. Instead of removing jurisdiction entirely from municipal courts to handle domestic violence matters, we have received a lot of input from advocates. We have reviewed the statutes. We are instead setting forth a set of requirements that municipal courts are going to have to adhere to if they choose to continue to take jurisdiction of domestic violence offenses. I'll be somewhat brief about this. We specifically cross-reference the Victim Rights Act. This is the bedrock of survivors' rights to be informed and know what's going on in a criminal matter in state courts. We are saying here that it has to apply to domestic violence matters in municipal courts. With some input from the Office of Victim Program staff and Department of Public Safety, we elaborate with more specificity on which VRA duties attach to which system actors at the municipal court level. We cross-reference specific domestic violence sentencing requirements in state statute. We cross-reference domestic violence probation requirements. We cross-reference requirements governing if somebody is released on bond. We cross-reference how it goes when somebody is to get domestic violence offense treatment. There has to be compliance with DVOMB standards. We are requiring best effort that the same prosecutor remain on the matter throughout. We know that dates have to be met. Maybe a prosecuting attorney is ill one day. We understand that. The reason here is for the experience of the survivor, because having to recount your story over and over and over and over again to different prosecutors who may be moving in and out of your case can be re-traumatizing for somebody who's gone through one of these matters. And to the points that the Majority Leader raised, we have specific requirements for reporting data up to and pulling data back down from the Bureau of Investigation. Last and critically, we provide for the same enforcement mechanism that we have in state law for VRA compliance, where these rights that are meant by this bill, as amended by the committee report, to adhere in the survivor of a domestic violence matter in municipal court, where these rights are not being made good on, the survivor may go to the Crime Victim Services Advisory Board and raise a complaint, and the process goes on from there. So we appreciate the bipartisan support of the Judiciary Committee in making these changes, and we ask for the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the Judiciary Committee report is passed. To the bill, Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the bill is essentially now the work that we did in committee. Again, appreciate the engagement of many advocates, local governments, and others in getting us to this place. Appreciate the support of the committee in getting us to this place. I did want to note we have a little bit of a delayed effective date so that local governments have time to come into compliance. We ask for your support of 1222.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to thank the sponsors of this bill for all of the hard work that they put into this. You all have heard me up here several times talking about how important it is to make sure that we're taking care of victims in our society, and especially some of the most vulnerable victims, which includes those folks that have suffered that intimate partner violence. And so I just wanted to commend the sponsors for the work that they did on this, because as introduced, I did have some of the concerns that were raised about, if we move effectively the population of 1.5 million folks that live in these municipalities, if we move that to the county court level, what's the impact going to be on the county courts? Is this going to delay court processes that are already bogged down even more? And I think that the sponsors have done very good work as far as trying to find that middle ground to where, so this is misdemeanor domestic violence. Without trying to belabor the point, domestic violence is not a standalone crime. Domestic violence is a label that attaches to any other crime that occurs between people who are or have been in an intimate relationship. So you can have domestic violence that ranges all the way from, at the low end, petty offenses, all the way up to your substantial felonies. And so the way it's currently handled in municipal courts is municipal courts typically have jurisdiction for misdemeanor or lower level offenses. So if that misdemeanor or lower level offense occurs between individuals who are or have been in an intimate relationship, then the domestic violence label would attach to it. And then for the 5 municipalities that have domestic violence that handle domestic violence in their municipalities, that is where this bill as amended now applies. And what it does is it just ensures that the rights that are already afforded to victims of domestic violence at the state level or the county level, if they were to go through the county or a district court, that those same rights have to be implemented at the municipal level by the municipality. So the sponsors had gone through that list of things like VRA and ensuring compliance with Lautenberg, which is the federal amendment since 1996 that says that if you've done something DV related, then there's impact to your ability to own firearms, things of that nature. And so, like I said, I was just very happy to see in committee the hard work, the amendment that was brought that respected the local control and allowed the municipalities that want to continue to do this in-house in order to alleviate burdens on the county courts. That local control was respected, but guardrails were put in place to ensure that municipal DV cases had the equivalent protections, rights, and everything else that would be associated with a DV misdemeanor case or lower that went through the county court system. So for those reasons, in respect to all of that work and out of respect to the fact that I've actually seen these cases go through municipal courts. My old agency hasn't done them in about a decade. They used to do them when I started. And so for those reasons, because of the way that this bill balances local control and respect for the victims, I was a yes vote in committee, and I'm happy to be another yes vote on the floor.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1222? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1222. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1222 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move House Bill 1133 down one bill.
Mr. Shebel, will you please read the title of House Bill 1278? Oh, I'm sorry. The bill will be moved. Mr. Shebel, will you please read the title of House Bill 1278? Thank you.
House Bill 1278 by Representatives Brown and Parenti concerning measures permitting parties to certain legal relationships to satisfy certain requirements without having to appear in person.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1278.
To the bill.
There is no committee report. Thank you. This bill is a bill that continues a program that has been successful in not only in Boulder County and in Denver County, but across the state in helping people to apply for and appear before a clerk for a marriage license without appearing in person, but instead appearing virtually. So it's a good bill that will continue a program that's been successful in Boulder County. It has helped to process more than 5,000 different marriage licenses. And I'd ask for an aye vote.
Representative Parenti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, as terrible as the pandemic was, one of the things that it did was challenge us to relook at our ways of doing business, both in the commercial and government spaces. And what we found is that many of those changes enacted have proven to be wildly popular and improved access in the provision of services across large parts of our society. This bill comes as a result of one of those changes. The ability to obtain a marriage or civil union license virtually proved very popular for both the county governments who chose to implement those programs and the residents who were able to take advantage. I'm very happy to carry forward this kind of win-win opportunity, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Further discussion on House Bill 1278. Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this bill. I am going to vote yes on this bill, but so as a pastor, I have done hundreds and hundreds of weddings. The idea that they would go get their paperwork online is not a problem for me. I don't see this as an issue at all. And the bill sponsors did a good job on this. They really, it popped for them that there could be potential human trafficking issues, and so they put a whole element in this bill to address human trafficking stuff, and I was greatly appreciative of that. One of the things that I also have done over the years is I have worked extensively with anti-human trafficking groups. I was the chairman of the board for a group that rescues girls out of human trafficking, and all of the things that have to do with that. And we've had as young as 9 years old that we have rescued out of human trafficking with the attachment of prostitution to that. And so I've worked extensively with the human trafficking side of this. And one of the things that I have found is that you cannot have too much knowledge and education when it comes to human trafficking. One of the things, this is just one little healthy informational side note that is directly about this amendment. But, this bill, but a lot of people don't realize that the kids, girls and boys, but predominantly girls, that come by your house trying to sell things, not like school calendars and stuff, but other type of stuff. A lot of times those kids are being trafficked right then, and we don't know that because we haven't been educated about this. But anytime one of those kids comes to my door, I give them a call. I give them a card, and I let them know that if they ever need to, they can call us to get out of this human trafficking. Human trafficking is a huge thing, and it needs to be addressed on so many levels. And while this bill is not a bad bill, like I said, I am going to vote yes for it because having done so many weddings, I don't actually see this as a problem. In fact, I think this will help, specifically when you got overseas people and things like that. But this is a extremely ripe opportunity for human trafficking. So I move Amendment L001 and ask it to be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion. We are waiting for it to be displayed, and it is now to the amendment. Representative Bottoms.
So all I'm doing in the amendment is taking the requirement for the county people that are working through these. You're going to have a handful of people that are going to be actively involved in these online connections between these two people that are wanting to get married, and they need to be trained and to deal with human trafficking and to see it, to recognize it. It can be very subtle sometimes, but there are some actually good telltale signs. And so the bill says that these people need to be trained every 2 years, and I would like to bring this down to 1 year, have them trained every single year, and if we could even do more than that, I would be very interested in this, or maybe different layers of training. There's not only training as to see if they are being trafficked, but there's extra training that you can do. I train all of my pastoral staff with this. I train all of our human trafficking staff. When I was working with that group, we trained them on this. We've trained people across all over the state in human trafficking training, and so I would just like to move it down to 1 year and try to get a little more training for these people to be able to recognize this as actually a major part of this bill. And so I would urge an aye vote on L001.
Further discussion on L001. Representative Parenti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, this is a friendly amendment. We've spoken to stakeholders. They're all supportive, and we urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Further discussion on L001. Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of L001 to House Bill 1278. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L001 is adopted. To the bill. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion on the bill. Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of House Bill 1278 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1278 as amended is adopted. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1133.
House Bill 1133 by Representatives Lindsay and Amable, also Senators Gonzalez and Rodriguez, concerning the cost of communication services for persons in custody.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1133 and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the committee report. Representative
Thank you,
Amabile.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So we offered an amendment in appropriations that created a phased-in approach, and that reduced the fiscal note and also gives DOC the chance to figure out how they're going to do it, and also to make a better estimate of what the calls volume will be once it becomes free. And I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Armagost.
On the appropriations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L4 to the committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
So moved. The amendment has been properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This just basically helps DOC and the taxpayers. As far as the rollout, it just extends it 1 year to give DOC a little bit more time, a little lighter fiscal note on the first year of their rollout. That 25% is going to amount to a lot on the first year, so just pushing that to September 1st of 24 rather than September 1st of 23 for that initial portion of the rollout so that it can kind of soften the blow as they get it. Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this already is a phased approach, which we worked on very carefully with DOC. And just so everybody is clear, DOC is good with this policy, and I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004 to the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The amendment is lost. To the committee report. Representative Bottoms.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a similar amendment, but it comes back to the committee report, realizing that this is phased out, and I do think this is a good idea to phase it out. I think it's a little rushed phased out. I think it could be extended a little bit more. And here's one of the reasons that maybe the sponsors didn't process this. When you're phasing something like this out, it's important to get it moving when you have that time frame of phasing. I'll simplify it. These are 1 year at a time. But to simplify it, if you phase something out and say we're going to do phase one, which is a pretty involved thing, it involves the fiscal note, it involves the state, it involves all this other stuff. If you say we're going to phase this out, we're going to do this in day 1, day 2, day 3, well, that's not really that phased when it comes to the mentality of this. This is year 1, year 2, year 3, but this needs to be spread out a little bit so that year 1 should be year 1, 2, 3. The next section, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And so that's what my amendment does, is try to phase this out a little bit longer, just stretch it out a little bit longer time frame to give all of the people involved with this the ability to accomplish this in every single way, logistically. Logistically, the way this committee report has this phase is this is going to be substantially a nightmare for these people. And so just trying to lengthen it out a little bit, and would hope that the bill sponsors would recognize this is not an attack on the bill or anything like that. It's just let's phase it a little bit and give a little bit more time frame in the process this. So did I move an amendment? Okay, well then here goes. I move 005 and have it properly displayed. I got caught up listening to myself.
The amendment is properly displayed. Please proceed.
So all the stuff I just said, that's the reason. So I ask for an aye vote on 005.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have negotiated this bill over many months, working in coordination with DOC. We have a phased-in approach. We have considered the work that it takes to implement a program like this, and have even in our Appropriations Committee amendment taken out email and video communications. We have done everything we can to work with the department to make this a workable policy, and we're in a good place. So please vote no on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005 to the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. To the committee report. Representative Amabile. Okay, the motion before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to talk a little bit about the why of the bill. So the why of the bill is that we have a lot of information that says if families can stay connected while a family member is incarcerated, if people can stay connected to their community, whoever that is, while they're incarcerated, they do better, and their family and their community also does better. And when they get out, they are in a better position to do well. If they can communicate with people who provide services, if they can line up housing, all the things, then when they get out, they're going to be more successful. So this is really a public safety bill that we would like to see happen, and it is a lower recidivism bill, and it is a community safety bill. And I urge a yes vote.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, Representative Amabile and I have been working on this notion since the fall. We toured some facilities over the summer, and at each one would chat about what we were seeing. I have family members who are incarcerated, and I have seen the toll that these costs of communication take on not only the incarcerated person, who is not incarcerated in a vacuum. They have families, they have parents, siblings, friends, and they have children. And as we discussed in this chamber yesterday, keeping those relationships tight and connected benefit not only the incarcerated individual, but also the children. The people that are remaining, taking care of the children, trying to make these connections, also incur tens of thousands of dollars in debt to pay for these phone calls to keep everybody connected. And we think that's wrong. So that's what we're here to do. That's what our bill does. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I read through this bill, honestly, I really didn't have a lot of problems with the actual policy that it purports. I think that keeping families connected and having that communication is important. I think that second chances are critically important. The sticking point for me was the cost of this. The sticking point for me was the cost of this, just because I've got folks in my community that I've reached out and had conversations with, and they've talked about, look, Gabe, look, Representative Evans, we're working 2 or 3 jobs to try to make ends meet, and we didn't commit a crime. So why is it that more money is going to DOC when I'm a good citizen trying to do the right thing, and nobody's throwing money at me? And so, like I said, I don't really have a problem with the policy. I think that it's important to keep families together, to keep that communication together, to ensure that folks that are incarcerated have access to critical services. And so for that reason, I move Amendment L007 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment has been properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this amendment does is it recognizes the fact that this program is being phased in over a series of years and that the money for this year is appropriated from the general fund. Now, we've seen programs in the past where the money's been appropriated from the general fund and it's phased in over a couple of years, and unfortunately, year 2, year 3, that program goes away, doesn't get funded, gets funded at a lower level, something happens to the funding for that particular program. And so in furtherance of the policy of this bill, what this amendment does here is it just states that if funding, for some reason, becomes insufficient to cover the cost of all of the voice communications that are being made by folks who are incarcerated, then the department, so that's the Department of Corrections, needs to prioritize payments for phone calls to those inmates who have either a veterans background and are trying to seek veterans-related services, or for those inmates who have children. And so what this is doing is this is just prioritizing potential limited resources to make sure that it best accomplishes the policy of this bill, which is to ensure that families stay connected and that individuals who are trying to access services so that when they get out, they have the best second chance to be able to become a contributing member of society, that those services and the communications that are necessary to achieve and accomplish and obtain those services are what are being prioritized by the department. So for that reason, I ask for an aye vote on Amendment L007.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Amabile and I want every person to have access to free phone calls, and that's what our bill does. So please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Amendment L007 to the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Is there any further discussion on Representative Evans?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in the event that that amendment was lost, I had prepared another amendment that just broke down the services a little bit further. So I move Amendment L012 and ask it to be displayed.
That is a proper motion. The amendment has been displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the last amendment talked about veterans, families. This one focuses specifically on veterans. During my time in the military as a commander, unfortunately, I did have soldiers that got in trouble. I did have soldiers that got arrested. I did have soldiers that had involvement with the justice system. And as a commander, you're in a really weird position because on the one hand, you have to represent the U.S. government as a commander, but then you also represent the soldier as a commander. And so then, as I'm having these conversations with the justice system about what should happen to that soldier, one of the things that I always emphasized was, look, even though this individual made a mistake, and now they're in trouble, now they're going to jail or wherever they're going, the fact of the matter is they still raised their hand and they swore an oath, payable up to and including their life, to serve their country. And there are situations where even if a former military member is incarcerated, there are still situations where they can have access to some of their veterans' benefits. And so for those individuals who are incarcerated, who do have access to some of their veterans' benefits, who are trying to atone for a mistake that they've made, who are maybe trying to get back on their feet, who are trying to utilize their veterans' services in order to make sure that they can be a productive, contributing member of society when they get out, I believe that it's critically important to ensure that if there is a funding shortfall, that the department prioritize communications for those individuals so that they have the ability to communicate with outside assistance for veteran-related services so that they can have a better chance of obtaining using those veteran services so that when they are released from incarceration, they've hopefully been able to leverage the fact that their heart was originally in service, they raised their right hand in that service, and even though they had a bad day, they made a mistake, they want to get back on the straight and narrow path. They want to use their veteran services to help them, and this amendment will ensure that in the event that there's a funding shortfall, that they will be prioritized in being able to make those phone calls to seek those veteran-related services. And so for that reason, I ask for an aye vote on Amendment L012.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And obviously, we want these things for everybody who wants to connect with care, and it would be an undue burden on DOC to try to separate out different populations of people. And for all those reasons, but mostly because we want everybody to be able to receive these benefits, we ask for a no vote on this.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 12? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment 12 to House Bill 1133. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. It's an honor to serve with you.
So I was listening to this debate, and certainly I felt like some communications were being excluded that are really necessary. And if funding were to run out, it's really important that we do have a prioritization. And certainly it should be prioritized that the attorney-client calls be covered. That's why I move Amendment L011 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion.
Yeah, okay. You're welcome.
The amendment has been displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for us, just looking at 2 or 3 years, what the bill really is a funding bill. So it's moving money from our general fund to DOC. And DOC has nearly $1 billion budget. I would argue that they should be able to already do this out of their own funds, not necessarily having to come over to the General Assembly for what we need for other areas to run state government. But if funding is not provided from the general fund in 2 or 3 years' time, we should have a prioritization. And we just heard the argument made for attorneys, for veterans, and I'm arguing right here that for attorneys, this is a necessary communication that must take place because an inmate's case might still be ongoing. They might have an appeal that's taking place. They may need to consult their attorney. They may have other legal issues that are outstanding. And this is very important that if there is a funding shortfall, that we prioritize for sure the attorney-client communication first. And I would ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would ask for a no vote on this for all the reasons we already stated.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L11? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L11 to House Bill 1133. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Further discussion. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, considering that
attorneys just failed. I'm going to take another bite at the apple here. I move Amendment L010 and ask that it be properly displayed. What? Yeah, well, we're almost done.
The amendment is displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So instead of attorneys, as we're prioritizing in case there's a funding shortfall, we are looking here at a religious advisor or religious leader, that's your rabbi or your priest or your imam, being able to consult with your religious advisor is very, very important. I mean, when someone is in prison, that's their opportunity to be able to get their life straightened out, to be able to find meaning and purpose and redirection. And their religious counselor or advisor or pastor or clergyman, whoever that particular person is, it's important that this communication be prioritized and that it be allowed to take place. And we would ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As each of these amendments point out, there are many different reasons that incarcerated folks need to make phone calls, and they are all important, whether it's to a spiritual advisor, for military services, families, any of it. That's why we want everybody to be able to make these calls to whomever they choose, and we will not be prioritizing any of that. So please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Boddins.
I would definitely urge an aye vote on this amendment, and I can't really remember why now. It's because I'm a pastor.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on on Amendment L10? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Amendment L10 to House Bill 1133. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as the sponsors had mentioned, there are a variety of folks that might be needing to make calls outside of a prison facility. And again, we've seen programs not receive funding. We've seen that happen in rural health care and other areas. So in the event that this program at some point in the future doesn't receive sufficient funding to cover everything, we want to make sure that those key populations are protected and prioritized. And so I move Amendment L009 and ask for it to be displayed.
That is a proper motion. Thank you. The amendment is displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, what this amendment does is it just further refines and prioritizes the policy of this bill, which is to ensure that incarcerated individuals have those connections to their outside support structures, that they're able to remain in contact with their immediate family, that they're able to have those phone calls with their kids, with their spouse, with whoever those immediate family members are that provide them that support so that those relationships can be maintained, and that when that individual gets out of that facility, then they have a better support structure, they have those relationships that they've maintained, and they're better able and they're better postured to be able to reintegrate into society because they didn't lose all of their support structures. And again, in a perfect world, we know that this program would receive all of the funding that it needs over the 3-year phase-in cycle, but we also know that we don't live into a perfect world and that there are times where there are budget shortfalls. There are times where programs don't get funded to the full extent that they need. And so, as I mentioned before, I really don't have any objection to the policy. I just want to make sure that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket and that we have an alternative list of priorities in the event that there's not enough funds to cover everybody, that the funds are being appropriately prioritized and routed to those individuals who would best benefit from those services. And so for that reason, I would ask for an aye vote on Amendment L009 since it prioritizes maintaining communications with those immediate family members who are most likely going to be an integral part of that individual's support structure once they get out of an incarceration facility. Thank you.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like this amendment. I think it's interesting how the bill is posited as communication with family. It's about the kids. It's always about the children. It's about the children. There's music involved. But then when the rubber meets the road, it's about every communication. It's not just about it's not about children. And we look at when you look at the bill, it shall provide. So it shall provide. Yes, it does say something about within constraints of the facility, operation of the facility, but it says shall provide. I think that's a little bit. It's quite broad. It doesn't say shall provide from a single phone, shall provide from a bank of phones, shall provide from whatever. So I think this amendment does a good job of constraining the bill to what the sponsors kind of sell it as, which is to communicate with children as opposed to maintaining communications with their cartel or whatever other business enterprises or criminal enterprises they have. Just saying, there's reasons for limiting just the sheer volume of that is it will lead to that. There will be communications, there will be those issues. So one way to limit that would be to prioritize that with children. I'm surprised that the sponsors laugh at the idea of being able to, during the Vietnam War, there was a example of somebody who communicated out with blinking eyes torture, and that was an example. So there's a lot of communication that's going to be going on that we probably don't want to be going on, that used to be restricted because of the natural restrictions of this, but now we're going to have a shall provide, and I'm just going to guess that the maintaining communication, hopefully it's with the children, for the children, but I'm going to guess that's not going to be the emphasis of this program. So I hope it is, and if it is, then this amendment is definitely in keeping with what the bill sponsors are selling it as, and what it actually is. We'll see.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Amendment L009 to House Bill 1133. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Representative Soper.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So I've been listening to this debate and realized that one problem is that we're trying to do it very piecemeal, and that it'd be better to have a more inclusive approach. Therefore, I move Amendment L008 and ask that it be properly displayed.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in listening to the debate and hearing the counterarguments that we were going at it very much piecemeal, this amendment seeks to address all those concerns. So if we're looking down the road in the future, there's going to be a funding shortfall, or we choose not to fund this, that there should be a prioritization, and that it would consider the immediate family members, religious advisor, religious leader, the inmate's attorney, and a veteran who's seeking veteran-related services, and that these be considered the priority list. This is just important because, to us, we are concerned about the future economics of our state. We may not always be in good economic times, and we know that this is a program that could be likely to suffer not having funding. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is the prison that's in my district in Delta. It's the worst funded in the entire state. It's so bad that they actually grow their own garden for some of their fresh vegetables. They do their own composting. And I'm really concerned that you'll actually see this not implemented there. So what ends up happening is that we have the statewide policy, and then it just doesn't make it to the lowest of the low. So to be able to have a priority that's set into law is very much important. We want to make sure that we're explicitly stating, as a General Assembly, who we want to prioritize if dollars are short, and that's what we're saying here, and I'd ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill that Rep. Amabile and I have put forth covers all the folks in this amendment, plus more. It covers all incarcerated folks to have their communications with anybody that they are choosing. So please vote no on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1133? Representative Wilson, or Winter, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I always represent my district, so traveling throughout the district, I talk to a lot of people that work in the system, and some of them just, they took issue with some of this. They say they get paid every day, they have money for commissary. They just can't understand why we see so many programs, education, healthcare, lack funding, and then we would put funding behind this. And in representing my constituents, I told them I would come up here, air their grievances, talk about it. They just can't figure out. They're not against families, they're not against people communicating, but they said there's a lot of these people are sitting with money in their bank account. They have the ability to do this. They get paid by the state. They get their health care. They get many other things while incarcerated. And this is just one more thing that they feel like they're paying for. And they just take issue with that. They want those tax dollars to go somewhere else. So I'd urge a no vote on this. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1133. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1133 is passed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move House Bill 1270 to the end of the special orders calendar.
House Bill 1270 will be moved. Up next, Mr. Shebo, please read the title of House Bill 1271.
House Bill 1271 by Representatives Gonzalez Gutierrez and Soper, concerning the establishment of Lunar New Year Day as an observed state holiday.
Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1271.
So moved. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So members, for those of you who've served the same amount of time that I have, 5 years, will remember that entire time or less, that every Lunar New Year, I will present each one of you with a trinket representing the Lunar New Year. And that's because my wife is from Taiwan, and Taiwan celebrates the Lunar New Year along with many other countries throughout Asia. And there's a list that you'll find within this bill of nations that do recognize the Lunar New Year, from China to Vietnam to South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and other places. And we have a lot of Coloradans who also celebrate the Lunar New Year as this is their culture and their heritage. I will tell you that it's really important that as a state we recognize Lunar New Year as an observed holiday, because the meaning, is recognizing a significant culture that contributes to Colorado and making Colorado a better place, but it also shows our state's values and that we're willing to recognize Lunar New Year through those values. Lunar New Year is something that is really important. Certainly within my family, we've embraced that because of my wife's culture. And Lunar New Year is all about family, returning to your family, getting back to your roots, and coming together. I can't think of anything more special than that. And that's what we should all be willing to get behind. I'd be remiss if I didn't also deliver a Lunar New Year greeting. So, Gung Shi Fash Sai is, it's Happy New Year. Yeah, Gung Shi Fash Sai. And Sulu Kwai Lon is also Happy New Year. So I wish all of you a Happy New Year and look forward to being able to officially celebrate it as an observed holiday next year on in February. Thank you. And I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm really, really honored to be joined by Rep. Soper on this, and the fact that you've brought that acknowledgement every year. And this year, as you all may remember, it was in the very beginning weeks of session that we did a tribute to honor our Asian American Pacific Islander communities, and specifically the Lunar New Year. And I am very proud to represent, a very vibrant Asian community and business districts in Colorado, with both in the Far East Center and Little Saigon Business District. And several members of that community from everywhere just started sending messages when we were getting close to session and asking if this was something that the state legislature could take up. And of course, I told them, let's figure this out. And so this whole policy has been completely community-led. Everything that has been written in this has been at their advice and what they had wanted to see and how they want to see this played out. So I'm very honored to be part of this whole process, and can't wait till we, pass this out of the House, hopefully, and get it over to the Senate and ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1271? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1271. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
Okay, well done. Thank you.
The ayes have it, and House Bill 1271 is passed. Mr. Shebo, please read the title of House Bill 1199.
House Bill 1299 by Representatives Froelich and Soper, also Senator Winter, concerning measures to provide additional access to services for victims of sexual assault.
You got it? Sure. Oh, yeah, if you want to move it.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1199 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee, we actually had, especially for Judiciary, a relatively short and nice hearing, and with great results coming out of committee. But we do have an amendment that just clarifies the process by which law enforcement gets reimbursed for any sexual assault evidence kit collection. And
Thank you. Mr. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to add to that, so this, Judiciary likes to be able to, make changes here. So if you look at the committee report on page 2, we're changing the must to a may request the reimbursement costs to be covered through the program. And then we're striking out the last sentence of that paragraph on lines 24 and 25.
We're just going to pause for 1 second, please.
I have to move it.
If you can just sit with us for 1 second, we're going to have Mr. Shebo reread the title of the bill.
House Bill 1199 by Representatives Froelich and Soper, also Senator Winter F., concerning measures to provide additional access to services for victims of sexual assault.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I move Amendment L003 to the Judiciary Committee report of 1199 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is properly displayed. Please proceed. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you look at your committee report on page 2, lines 19 through 25, so we are changing it from a must request to a may request. This helps with law enforcement that they don't have this mandate. And that, that's the basic change. We are deleting the last sentence on lines 24 and 25 to coordinate with the may.
We ask for an aye vote.
And we ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003 to the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The amendment is passed. To the committee report.
We ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This carries on with the work that we've done over several years now. The good representative from Delta and I, aiming to empower survivors of sexual assault. This has been their, they've asked for a tracking system for the rape kits year after year. This year, we're finally, looks like we'll be able to do it. This bill aims to strengthen the systems that survivors turn to after an assault. If you can imagine your body being a crime scene, you can begin to understand some of the importance of giving back some sense of empowerment to folks who are survivors, and it's just terrifically important for them to be able, and for law enforcement to be able to keep tabs on where these kits are as they move through the system. And we ask for an aye vote.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just want to thank my good colleague from Greenwood Village. It's an honor to be continuing this good work that we started a few years ago. It really is a crying shame to think that someone could be a survivor of sexual assault and then have to pay for the evidence to be able to build the case against the perpetrator that raped them. Currently, 30 states have implemented or are in the process of implementing a forensic sexual assault kit tracking system. Colorado will be number 31 when we pass this particular bill. It's like tracking a package. You can log on to FedEx or UPS's website and enter that tracking number when you feel like it and when you're ready. And that's really important. It's something that we heard from the survivors over and over again, is that they don't want to necessarily be pinged in a text message or any other form of communication. They want to be able to take that tracking number and be able to log on to the secure website and be able to see where it is in the process when they're ready. And then it's also important that they aren't paying for the evidence. And that's what's also included in this bill. And we ask for a yes vote. This is continuing the good work, as we said, and I'm very proud of this. Thank you.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my co-prime. And I just do want to add that included in this are provisions to help out our rural law enforcement that struggle sometimes to pay for this evidence collection and evidence tracking, all through the Sexual Assault Victim Emergency Payment Program. And so we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1199? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1199 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1199 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1270.
House Bill 1270 by Representatives Garcia and Lindsay concerning the creation of the Urgent Incident Response Fund.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I would like to move. I'd like to move House Bill 1270 and the Appropriations Report.
So moved. To the Appropriations Report.
It passed.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report to House Bill 1270. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Garcia.
Madam Chair, I'm excited to bring 1270 with my co-prime Representative Lindsay. What this bill is doing is it is creating an urgent incident response fund. This urgent incident response fund is intended to support incidences in our state that do not rise to the level of an emergency declaration. The most recent incident that occurred where this bill, had it been in place already, would have benefited was the migrant crisis that we experienced in December and January. This bill would have been able to allow the state to support local governments in covering the cost of supporting the migrants that arrive. It's a good bill. Urge you to vote yes.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm from Northwest Aurora, and after the incident that Rep. Garcia was speaking about, my community was impacted by this as well. So these kind of funds would help my municipality be able to deal with situations like the migrant response, but also communities that are dealing with drought or just need some kind of state and local agency to address any kind of shortage or situation. This is a great bill to allow municipalities and local governments to be able to take care of that. Please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So after talking to the bill sponsors, I am going to move an amendment. So I move Amendment L003 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion. And the amendment has been displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this amendment just provides a degree of transparency so that we know where these dollars are going and for what purpose, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Garcia.
Members, take out your cameras, turn on your recording devices. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L003? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Amendment L003 to House Bill 1270. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. And the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the bill, Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it is just a nice reminder that bipartisanship is still possible. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative DeGraff.
We won't be discussing Representative DeGraff, but there is more, where there is discussion by, not of, hopefully not of, something interesting rather. Okay, before we get to the bill and some of the issue, I just wanted to end the discussion. I just wanted to start by requesting the sponsors to remove the safety clause and return it to a petition clause. I don't see how this is. I get their intent of this for a fund, but this is not for the emergency, the immediate safety, health, and welfare of the state, or the citizens of Colorado, rather. That's what it's for. Certainly the 90 days extra that we can take to sort this out would unlikely do anything to change anything, but it does help preserve the integrity of that of the safety clause. Thank you. Oh, so I would like to move L005 to HB 1270 and ask that it be displayed, and then take my previous comments and now put them after this so I don't have to say them again.
The amendment is properly displayed. Is there further discussion on Amendment L005? Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I just want to read from our bill. It says a bill for an act concerning the creation of the Urgent Incident Response Fund. We are addressing incidents that are urgent and by definition need to be taken care of as quickly as possible. So please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Amendment L005 to House Bill 1270. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is lost. Is there further discussion on House Bill 1270? Representative DeGraff.
Could have done it the easy way. All right. So I guess the trick now is to call something urgent, and then it's part of the definition. So I have that down now. All right. Gifts, grants, and donations from interested parties. $1 million that's going to be continuously appropriated. There's just a lot to it that just sounds like it, not as the intent of the sponsor certainly, but that it certainly can end up being a slush fund that just goes around. And the reason I say that is because local governments already they're required to have 12 to 15%. They're required to have 12% in reserve. Some have 20% if you have good conservative. Just going to wait for the minority leader here to calm down. Somebody took a walk through the park, I think. To the bill. All right, so a typical municipality is going to be required to have 12 to 15%. If you have a government that's conservative and doesn't spend everything and then more, you're going to have a 20% reserve. If you have billions of dollars, you're going to have those millions of dollars in funds, and that's per municipality. And that's what it's for. It's for the rainy day. It's for the unplanned or unforeseen emergencies. And so now we're going to take this $1 million and then we're going to put it at the state level, and then the state is going to disperse it. It is defined for urgent issues, but urgent is not exactly a really tight definition. So non-disaster, non-emergency funds. So they can be used, reduce vulnerability, prepare from all hazards. They can provide for rapid relocation and recovery. Overall, I think what we'd find is as local governments begin to rely on this money and think, oh, the state has this, really the $1 million is not really sufficient for that, and it's going to need more. And then what typically happens with gifts, grants, and donations is all of a sudden they dry up, and then all of a sudden there's an appropriation that needs to be made to make up for it. So, questions that I have is who gets to define urgent? What gets to be defined as urgent? Just because it's a very broad issue. Because once that money is gone, it's gone. It's not accountable to the. What the money can be spent on exactly is not. It's just overly broad. What the money can be spent on, and that there is no. The money appropriated, while the money appropriated is limited to $1 million, how it is to be spent is not defined. Gifts, grants, and donations. What happens if it collects more money in a given year, and how is that determined? What is the upper bound of the amount? So I think this is a really good, a really well-intentioned bill. I'm just afraid that it's just going to end up being another slush fund kicking around, and then we have local governments vying for their chunk of the pie, and then it's not enough. And then so what we've done is what we're doing with this bill is we're encouraging local governments to look past their own resources and their own planning, and we're encouraging them to look to mother government for the handout. And we're always asking the citizens to look, and that creates some sovereignty issues, because you can't have individual sovereignty or local sovereignty if you have local dependence on state government. So there's while it is very well intended, I think there's a lot of problems just in the way of the execution, and then the overall really the overall morality of the bill, which actually undermines local responsibility and therefore local sovereignty. So I would say I would request a no vote on this, not based on the work of the sponsors, not based on the intent of the sponsors, but just on what it will do in tipping in improperly tipping the balance between state and local government. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Representative Garcia.
Members, I just want to address a couple of those points. There was an amendment passed that changed continuously funded to annually appropriated, so that's addressed. Second, the definition of urgent is actually quite narrow. We explicitly say that anything that's already defined under declaration of emergency, disaster, cannot be used. This fund cannot be used under anything that fits under that definition. So it does not fit any of the examples and could not be used for any of the examples that we heard our colleague just mention. I also want to, I move L004, actually.
And ask that it be displayed.
Yes, please, I ask that it be displayed so you all can read it properly.
The amendment is properly displayed. Please proceed.
So this amendment adds a little bit more accountability and tight-knitting of this bill, and it declares that the division shall promulgate rules specifically on how governments can apply for reimbursement, what the eligibility is, and the distribution and receipt of an approved reimbursement. So this will actually help to clarify and establish criteria, and I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. To the bill, Representative Lindsay.
Folks, this is a great bill. Vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1270? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1270 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1270 as amended is passed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Colleagues, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Shebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it is under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1133 is amended, 1199 is amended, 1222 is amended, 1240 is amended, 1242 is amended, 1270 is amended, 1271, 1278 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 60 laid over until April 21st, 2023.
Representative Parenti. That is a proper motion. There are amendments at the desk. Representative Evans, I'm sorry, Mr. Shebel, please read the first Evans amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Evans moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Evans Amendment L12 to House Bill 1133 to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1133 is amended passed.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the first Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole and ask for it to be displayed.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So again, colleagues, this amendment just recognizes the fact that sometimes when we're talking programs that are funded over multiple years, sometimes you have funding dry up. It may not be appropriated to the total amount that's necessary to make that program work. We've seen it happen in other programs. And so all this amendment does is it prioritizes that phone calls for folks who are incarcerated in the Department of Corrections. It says that if there's a funding shortage and it's insufficient to cover all of the funding, all of the phone calls in this bill, then the department has to prioritize phone calls for those individuals who are veterans and who are seeking veteran-related services. I would ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the first Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. On the screen, Representative Doherty, how do you vote? We will come back to Representative Doherty. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Morrow votes no. Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representatives Bockenfeld, DeGraff, and Marshall, please vote. Representative DeGraff is excused. Please close the machine. With 17 aye, 45 no, and 3 excused, the first Evans Amendment fails. Mr. Shebel, please read the second Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Evans moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Evans Amendment L7 to House Bill 1133 to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1133 is amended passed.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the second Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole and ask for it to be displayed.
You may proceed.
Thank you. So again, colleagues, this one just says that if the funding is insufficient, so we covered the veterans last time, this one just adds inmates who have children, again, trying to ensure that we are appropriately prioritizing phone calls to external community support structures in the event that funding is insufficient to cover all of the phone calls. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, please vote no. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the second Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. On the screen, Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Morrow votes no. Representative Garcia, please vote. Mr. Shebel, please close the machine. With 17 aye, 46 no, and 2 excused, the second Evans Amendment is lost. Mr. Shebel, please read the third Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Evans moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Evans Amendment L9 to House Bill 1133 to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1133 is amended passed.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the third Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole and ask for it to be displayed.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Again, same vein here, colleagues. This just says that if funding is insufficient, those communications should be prioritized for those inmates who are calling immediate family members. I ask for your aye vote.
Representative Amable.
Thank you. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the third Evans Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Online, Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Morrow votes no. Please close the machine. With 17 aye, 46 no, and 2 excused, the third Evans Amendment is lost. Mr. Schiebel, please read the first Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Soper moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Evans Amendment, L10 to House Bill 1133, to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1133 is amended passed.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the first Soper Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask that it be properly displayed.
You may proceed.
Thank you, members. As we had a robust conversation about this, this would prioritize a religious leader or advisor, so your pastor, your rabbi, as someone that would be funded for making that phone call and would ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, please vote no. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the first Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Morrow votes no. Representatives Bockenfeld and Bradfield, please vote. Please close the machine. With 16 aye, 47 no, and 2 excused, the first Soper Amendment is lost. Mr. Schiebel, please read the second Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Soper moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Evans Amendment, L11 to House Bill 1133, to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1133 is amended passed.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the second Soper Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask that it be properly displayed.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So this one would prioritize attorneys. It's really important that if we are going to have limited funds, that when we make that priority list, that the attorney-client call be covered, and we ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, our bill will cover phone calls for all incarcerated folks. We don't need any prioritization. Please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the second Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Morrow votes no. Please close the machine. With 18 aye, 45 no, and 2 excused, the second Soper Amendment is lost. Mr. Schiebel, please read the third Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Soper moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Evans Amendment, L8 to House Bill 1133, to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1133 is amended passed.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the third Soper Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask that it be properly displayed.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So members, this amendment covers everyone in the priority list, so immediate family members, religious advisor, religious leader, phone calls to the inmate's attorney, and then when the inmate is seeking veterans-related services. We're just concerned that if there's going to be a budget shortfall or this isn't funded in 2 or 3 years, that we do have a priority list, so we are taking care of the most important phone calls that are taking place within the prison system, and we'd ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our bill covers all these folks and more. Please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the third Soper Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Sheeple, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Morrow votes no. Representative English, please vote. Please close the machine. With 17 aye, 46 no, and 2 excused, the third Soper Amendment is lost. There are no further amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Sheeple, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Doherty, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Morrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morrow votes yes. Please, Representative Doherty?
Sorry, can I be a yes?
Representative Doherty votes yes. Thank you for correcting your intention. Please close the machine. With 44 aye, 19 no, and 2 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. We're to announcements and introductions. Representative Kipp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The order of our bills that we will be hearing upon adjournment in Energy Environment has changed. We will be hearing bills in this order: HB 23-1282, SB 23-186, SB 23-16, HB 23-1294, and finally HB 23-1281. We will be meeting at 12:40 precisely across the hall over in the Old State Library. Hope to see you there soon.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members of House Appropriations and all of you who have bills calendared in appropriations, we will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in the Old State Library to hear the bills that are listed in your calendar, as well as House Bill 1020, House Bill 1298, and House Bill 1300.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Education, we are meeting at 1 o'clock in 107. Thank you.
Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move that the House recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.